The streets of Manhattan were alive with their usual chaos. Yellow cabs honked incessantly, cyclists weaved dangerously through traffic, and pedestrians scurried along the sidewalks, heads down, focused on their own worlds. The winter air was crisp, cutting through layers of coats, scarves, and gloves, making every breath visible in little clouds. Among the crowd, Mark, a single father in his early 30s, navigated the crowded street with careful precision. In one hand, he held the strap of his grocery bag, already heavy with essentials, while the other hand clutched the small, mittened hand of his 3-year-old son, Liam. His eyes darted constantly, making sure no one jostled them too hard, that Liam didn't slip away, that they didn't get caught in the tide of hurried pedestrians. Mark's mornings were always this hectic, balancing errands, work responsibilities, and childcare all at once, but today felt different. There was a strange tension in the air, a subtle energy he couldn't quite place. He adjusted the toddler strapped to his side, murmuring encouragements as Liam pointed at a bright storefront window filled with holiday decorations. The little boy's eyes lit up with wonder, but Mark's focus stayed split between the crowd and keeping the groceries from toppling over. Suddenly, movement out of the corner of his eye made him step back just in time. A sleek black luxury car had pulled up near the curb, the door swinging open, revealing a woman who seemed to command the street with her mere presence. She wore a tailored designer coat in deep emerald, her boots clicking elegantly on the pavement. Her hair was perfectly styled, her expression composed, yet her eyes scanned the world around her with a calm intensity. She stopped abruptly in front of Mark, her gaze locking on him. For a brief second, the bustling city seemed to blur into the background, the honking horns fading into silence. "You're the only one who stopped," she said, her voice calm but commanding, cutting through the noise like a clear note of music. Mark froze, unsure whether she was speaking to him, to the child, or to the universe itself. His mouth opened, closed, and opened again. His mind raced. Had he accidentally blocked her path? Did she mean something he hadn't noticed? He glanced down at Liam, who was now tugging gently at his coat, curious about the woman's sudden appearance. It's nothing," Mark stammered, finally finding words, though they sounded small and inadequate even to him. The woman's eyes softened slightly, but she didn't break her stare. There was something about her that felt different, magnetic, almost disarming. Mark noticed the subtle shine of an expensive watch on her wrist and the faint scent of perfume that seemed to linger like a whisper in the cold air. Around them, the city moved on oblivious to this brief moment of stillness, but for Mark, the world had shifted. Something had just entered his life, unannounced, unexpected, and utterly unforgettable. Mark stood frozen for a moment, gripping Liam's tiny hand tightly. The woman's words echoed in his mind, "You're the only one who stopped." He had no idea what she meant, but her gaze held a calm authority that made him feel both nervous and strangely drawn in. Around them, the streets of Manhattan continued their relentless pace. Cars honked, people brushed past, and distant construction noises rattled the air, but within the small bubble where they stood, time seemed to slow. He shifted Liam to his other side, trying to hide the nervousness in his voice. I just didn't want anyone to get hurt," he said, keeping his explanation simple, almost reflexively. He wasn't even sure if that was what she meant by stopping, but it was the honest truth. Mark had always been careful. Especially with his son. Life had taught him to notice the small things, to pause where others rushed. The woman tilted her head slightly, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. "That's admirable," she said softly, but there was a weight behind her words, as if she recognized something in him that others didn't. Her name, though she hadn't introduced herself yet, seemed attached to a presence, a kind of confidence that wasn't arrogance but certainty. Her emerald coat shimmered faintly under the winter sun, and Mark noticed a subtle elegance in the way she carried herself, effortless yet intentional. He shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of his casual winter jacket and scuffed boots, feeling underdressed compared to her refined appearance. He glanced at Liam, who was now staring curiously at the stranger, his white eyes filled with innocent wonder. She crouched slightly, bringing herself down to Liam's level, and said with a gentle warmth, "And who's this little one?" Mark's chest softened. "This is Liam," he replied, feeling the familiar protective pride swell in him. Liam reached out with a small hand, and she responded by giving him a playful wave. "Well, Liam," she said with a bright smile, You've got a dad who knows how to stop and think. That's rare these days. The compliment caught Mark off guard. Most people barely noticed the little things, let alone valued them. He cleared his throat, trying to mask the sudden rush of emotions. Thanks, I guess it's just instinct, he said, feeling his words stumble under her direct gaze. There was a strange pull in the way she looked at him, a mixture of curiosity and genuine interest. For a moment, they all just stood there, the child, the father, and this mysterious woman who had appeared like a whirlwind from nowhere. Around them, life continued, oblivious to the silent connection forming on the corner of a busy Manhattan street. Mark felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time, excitement, possibility, and maybe even a spark of hope that life could surprise him when he least expected it. She straightened and looked back at him, her eyes glinting with a mixture of intrigue and challenge. I hope I see you again, Mark, she said softly, before moving toward her car, leaving him stunned, curious, and oddly exhilarated. Mark watched Isabella glide across the street toward her sleek black car, her presence impossible to ignore. There was something magnetic about her, the way she moved, the subtle confidence in her posture, the warmth that peeked through her elegance. Even as she reached the car and adjusted her designer coat, Mark felt an odd mix of curiosity and nervous anticipation. For a moment, he couldn't remember the last time anyone had stopped him in the middle of Manhattan and made him feel seen. He shifted Liam in his arms, the little boy's eyes still wide with curiosity. Who is that, Dad? Liam asked, tugging gently at Mark's sleeve. Mark smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from Liam's forehead. Just someone interesting, he said softly, unsure if he even understood himself yet. He tucked Liam closer, glancing at the card Isabella had left. He hadn't even reached for it yet, but somehow he knew he would. A few minutes later, they stepped into the nearby coffee shop to warm up. The aroma of roasted beans and fresh pastries filled the air, offering a brief reprieve from the biting winter cold. Mark ordered a hot chocolate for Liam and a coffee for himself, trying to shake the strange energy that lingered after his encounter. He couldn't stop thinking about her words, "You're the only one who stopped." There was something in that phrase, something beyond the literal meaning, something almost personal. He found a quiet corner table and watched as Liam sipped his drink, small hands gripping the cup, his eyes sparkling with innocent excitement. Mark's mind wandered back to Isabella, her eyes, her smile, the way she had crouched to talk to Liam as if she genuinely cared. He had always been cautious around strangers, especially wealthy, polished people who seemed to live in a world so different from his own. And yet, there was no pretension in her demeanor, no hint of judgment. She had seen him, not just the single father struggling through his morning errands, but him, truly, in that brief moment. Mark's phone buzzed in his pocket, but it wasn't from her. He ignored it, letting the warmth of the coffee and the soft hum of the cafe settle over him. He found himself rehearsing what he might say if he did call her, the way his voice might sound, the questions he would ask. He realized, with a flutter of something he hadn't felt in years, that he wanted to know more. Not just about her, but about the strange pull she had on him, the spark she seemed to ignite with nothing more than a few words. Minutes passed, and the world outside carried on in its usual rush. But inside Mark's mind, time slowed, replaying her gaze, her voice, the subtle kindness in the way she had looked at Liam. He realized that this encounter, so brief, so unexpected, was unlike anything he had experienced before. And though he didn't know where it might lead, he felt an undeniable certainty, their story was only beginning. With Liam now finishing his hot chocolate, Mark stood, ready to face the rest of the day, but the memory of Isabella lingered like a gentle warmth in the winter air. He clutched the card in his pocket, a tangible reminder that sometimes, even in the chaos of Manhattan, life had a way of stopping for the right people at the right time. Mark stepped out of the coffee shop into the crisp Manhattan air, Liam's hand snug in his own. The city's chaotic rhythm continued unabated, honking taxis, pedestrians weaving like threads through the sidewalks, the distant wail of a siren, but something had shifted in him. The encounter with Isabella lingered, like a spark caught in dry kindling, ready to ignite something he hadn't felt in years, excitement, curiosity, and perhaps a glimmer of hope. He reached into his coat pocket and felt the sleek business card she had handed him earlier. His fingers traced the embossed letters, the faint scent of her perfume still clinging to it. It was impossible not to smile. A simple card had somehow become a symbol of possibility. Mark had been through enough of life's ups and downs to recognize the rare moments when the universe seemed to conspire to put the right person in your path. And this, Isabella, felt like one of those rare, undeniable moments. Liam tugged at his sleeve, breaking him from his thoughts. "Dad, can we go to the park now?" The little boy's enthusiasm was infectious. Mark laughed softly, nodding. "Yeah, let's go, buddy." He hoisted Liam onto his shoulders, feeling the familiar warmth of his child's trust, and started down the street toward the nearby playground. But even as they walked, his mind kept wandering back to her. He wondered what she was doing now, whether she was thinking of him, or whether she had already disappeared into the rhythm of her busy life. As he crossed a street, Mark noticed the subtle kindness she had shown Liam, how she had knelt down to speak with him, treating him with genuine attention. Most adults in his world barely noticed children beyond their noise or distraction, but Isabella had done something different. She had acknowledged Liam, respected him, and in that small gesture, Mark saw her character shine. It wasn't wealth, it wasn't elegance, it was empathy, and he realized how rare that was in the city, in life. By the time they reached the park, the winter sun was beginning to dip behind the skyscrapers, casting long shadows across the playground. Liam ran toward the swings, laughing as Mark pushed him gently, feeling that rare, fleeting joy that came from seeing someone you love completely happy. Mark, meanwhile, leaned against a nearby bench, still clutching the card. He knew he would call her. He didn't know what would happen next, but something inside told him that this encounter wasn't random. As the city lights flickered on, illuminating the streets with a golden glow, Mark felt a renewed sense of possibility. Life had been hard, full of responsibilities, struggles, and moments where he had doubted that anything unexpected could be good. But Isabella's brief appearance reminded him that sometimes, the universe paused just long enough for the right people to meet. And for the first time in years, Mark allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this encounter could change everything, not just for him, but for the small family he worked so hard to protect. Clutching the card once more, Mark whispered to himself, almost in awe, "I'll call her." And with that, the city's chaos didn't feel so overwhelming. For once, he felt ready to face it all, because something extraordinary had just begun.